everyone, and welcome to the podcast of English composer Andrew Downes. My name is Paula Downes. I am Andrew's younger daughter, and on today's show, I'm really excited to introduce you to world-renowned jazz guitarist and bassist Fred Thelonious Baker. Fred was a student at Birmingham School of Music, which is now Royal Birmingham Conservatoire, from 1979, and studied composition with my dad. In the late 80s, my dad went on to invite Fred to teach at Birmingham Conservatoire as part of his new School of Composition and Creative Studies. Fred has been a permanent teacher/lecturer in acoustic and bass guitar there ever since. In the mid-90s, my dad composed his concerto for guitar, electric bass guitar and strings for Fred playing electric bass guitar and Simon Dinnigan playing acoustic guitar. They recorded it for CD in 1999 with string players from the City of Birmingham Symphony Orchestra. Andrew Downes conducted the work himself. Here is Movement 1. You can purchase this CD or download the tracks at andrewdownes.com, where you can also purchase the sheet music and learn more about the work from the blog of Andrew's wife and publisher, Cynthia Downes. Fred Thelonious Baker is a jazz guitarist and bassist from the English village of Tibshelf, Derbyshire. Born in 1960, Fred was given a ukulele when he was 4 by his father. Indeed, Fred's parents were a major influence in the beginning of his musical journey. A year later, he was given his first guitar and went on to learn the classical guitar. During his mid-teens, Fred also began an interest in the bass guitar, an instrument with which he has since become synonymous. After studying at Chesterfield College, Fred went on to study at Birmingham School of Music, now Royal Birmingham Conservatoire, where he gained a GBSM and ABSM in teaching and performance. Around this time, at the invitation of Sir John Dankworth and Cleo Laine, Fred began teaching at Wavendon All Music Summer School. Since then, Fred has taught and given masterclasses at many universities, music colleges and music summer schools, including Guildhall School of Music and Drama, Berkeley College of Music, USA, St. Petersburg Conservatory, Russia, London Brunel, Huddersfield, Sheffield and Derby universities. Since 1989, he has been a permanent teacher/lecturer in acoustic and bass guitar at Birmingham Conservatoire. Fred has performed all over the world as a session musician and soloist with a variety of musicians and ensembles including Courtney Pine, Nigel Kennedy, Billy Cobham, the CBSO, Fairport Convention, Robert Wyatt, Harry Beckett, Horace Parlan, Soft Machine, John Etheridge, Pit Pyle, Rick Sanders, Karen Street, Joe Zaxer, Tony Levin, Phil Bates, Clive Bunker, Elton Dean, Simon Dinnigan, Jeff Eales, Liam Genicky and Phil Miller. As both a jazz guitarist and bassist, Fred has appeared extensively on many recordings. We will be hearing some of these over the course of this podcast episode. So now I am delighted to introduce you to Fred Thelonious Baker.
How did you get into music in the first place, and why did you learn the guitar?
Well, I suppose some of that was inevitable, but it's not always the case, is it? People do different instruments from their parents. My dad was a guitarist. Played plectrum guitar, early electric guitar actually, and classical guitar, And then my dad became a teacher of that, and I had the music all around me, so I was listening to things like Segovia and John Williams and people like that, but it was the whole music thing, and the jazz guitar, very early, Django Reinhardt, people like that, and Charlie Christian. So we had all these records around, and Big Bull Blues, and the blues was a big part of it all. So it was a whole mixture of the classical stuff and, the jazz rock, early rock and the folk music. I was just listening to all this stuff, and I had a little guitar, a uke or something, when I was about 4 years old. I started playing, that he got me, and then a little guitar, I think, when I was about 5, we dad fixed up and I started to play, and then you could see I was playing naturally by ear and stuff, and then started to teach me properly, I suppose. I really had to show that I wanted to do it, I think about 8 or 9 or something like that, and then I went on from there and studied the classical guitar with my dad and did my own stuff on it. And I loved all kinds of music, just the guitar was a nice way. And the electric bass is interesting because I remember my mum even started to play a little bit when she was young. There was red bass in the corner and it vanished. I've always wondered what happened to it. And I think she had to say because she needed some money for something,
Your dad, was he a professional guitarist then?
Yeah, it was great, Big Fred was, and a real encouragement, And I used to play sometimes duets with my father, which was great, classical guitar. And also, with my dad, I think he taught me first things, just playing by ear with blues things, doing some early blues and Django Reinhardt, Charlie Christian. So yeah, we used to do duets. So that's why my love of doing duets on the guitar came from, I think, that early stages and listening to that stuff. But yeah, playing the solo guitar, obviously it's very usul to do that, particularly now in the last year being on my own, a lot of the time. I would love to play with my wife, Birgit, but she's not been able to play very much at all. She's been pretty seized up in her arms on that, to play record and stuff and whistles. But yeah, so the early days, and there was all this guitar music around me. So I suppose what some people got later on, I was very fortunate. We didn't have much money, but music was everything, music and arts, because my mum's an artist, of course. It's all wonderful paintings and cards and stuff. So there was all that stuff around me. So in a way, where some people discover that later in life, if they kind of go backwards to discover what's happening, I was doing it all the time from the early 1960s, really, and sort of through there,
Well, that sounds amazing. Sounds like a really idyllic upbringing.
Yeah, well, I liked everything. We even had a harmonium from it, my dad had, I remember. So I always loved the organ, the church organ, you see. I always wanted to play it. So they let me learn the piano, I think, from about mid-teens, because you had to learn piano first then, which I really enjoyed as well, the second instrument. And then I did percussion and stuff in the youth, because I learned percussion. I played drums, I think, in a school band with some old mates when we were at school and stuff. So it's nice doing different things. I think it's good if you get the opportunity to do different things in life. And of course, singing in choirs and things is great as well. I had a really good school choir and a music school as well I went to. We had a Saturday morning music school in North Notts at the time, was excellent. Wow. And then, of course, by the time we got to what's now the Conservatoire, the BSM, Birmingham, then it was all the things happening there as well later on.
How did you end up going to Birmingham School of Music?
Well, that's a good thing. What happened is, I was looking at colleges back in the mid-70s, having the opportunity and chance to go to do it. So I got the stuff for grades. I did a pre-course as well at Chesterfield College. It used to be a wonderful foundation course that a friend of my father's, who worked with sometimes, who was a cellist in the Halley Orchestra, he run the course. And it was a really good foundation to music courses. And fortunately, it's gone like a lot of things. But it was great at the time. Met other friends and things. And then I sort of went from there. And a friend of my father's, Linda Darnell, great singer, she said, well, I'm studying doing my extra stuff at Birmingham. Why not think about there to go on? I think she actually took me down for the audition. And that's where I went for the thing. And after going to other places, I don't want to put anywhere else down, but I found that Birmingham was the most friendly place. And that's where I first met your father, met Andrew and Stephen Dorr, various other people, the sort of whole crew, the first thing round. And then I got this wonderful news. I got an unconditional place there and the real of what I did. And that was it. So I had to fight to get some kind of grant to do it. It was very difficult then with the authorities with music. I think they're trying not to rate it anymore. It's a crazy situation we're going through. But yeah, so I was really lucky. Before that as well, some of the summer schools I went on, there was a great classical guitar one I went down to when I was about 14 or so. And then at Cannington, that was a lovely course. And then the summer schools and the all music course that John Dankworth and Cleo Laine ran. That's how I first met, because my father knew John Dankworth back in the 50s, back in when he was doing session stuff in London and stuff.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they got me to go there. And that's how I made the connection. And John was very encouraging and everything. And Cleo, I used to play with them sometimes. At the same time, I went to Birmingham and I met other people. And that's where, through a friend of mine, Rachel, Perry, and was there, and Julie, yeah. They knew Rick Sanders, who was, of course, great violinist with Fairport and everything now. But at the time, he had this great band. He was in Soft Machine as well before, on the Albion band. And he had this band called Second Vision, which was with John Etheridge, Soft Machine, and Stefan Grappelli and stuff. Great, which I'm going to be working with John again soon. I was at some party just playing solo bass things, actually. He says, "What are you doing next year?" And that was it. I got a gig with John and Rick. It was the Etheridge Sanders group, which was playing the music of Second Vision. Because they had to change the name to be able to tour or something. Some contractual thing with Chrysalis with a record label. So anyway, so I was thrown into doing this tour and playing on Ronnie Scott's show and Brian Matthews sessions. And so I started straight away getting my own stuff played as well, which was amazing to go from just doing session work for other people. I felt like kind of arrived at that. Was great because I got the time while I was at college. They let me have the time to go on tour, which is fantastic. So I've gone straight into doing that because John heard me play at Wavendon, you see. That was a nice thing because he was teaching guitar there. So they all kind of connected up. Yeah. And that led on to all these other great things as well. Like. And I managed to finish my course and do all the composition. I had a great time at Birmingham and, it was great with Andrew and all the team there in the early days.
Did you meet my dad?
That must have been about 1979, I think. Yeah.
Oh, right. That's the year of my birth.
Is that, yeah, so 78, 79, I was looking. So, yeah, that's when I went to Birmingham. And then that was it. I started down there then eventually, because I had an extra year or something doing stuff,
I see. And he was your composition teacher?
Yeah, that was it. So I could do composition as part of the thing. So it was classical guitar and I used to do composition. It was great because we used to all play in each other's pieces and that and things when we're all doing things and playing in the orchestra. It was an absolute magic time. And that sort of gave me the encouragement to carry on and do things as well. Andrew was great. I think with a lot of people, he brought a lot of people out of the shell with trying to compose and get things done. He's so key sort of linchpin on it, which obviously led to other things later,
Yeah. So did you have any particular memories of any particular lessons you had or?
He sort of made everything possible. I remember once it was like, I think it was an old company, Mike Gibbs once told me, it's up to you to make things happen and writing, and it's almost gave you this thing that everything's possible. I think that was one of the things Andrew's great us in one lesson once, I remember, and I sort of took that away. And it wasn't this thing of this stiff composition that you get some places, you must do this and that. There's techniques to learn about doing certain things, but also that, the natural kind of composition, free composition. Andrew was fantastic for encouraging that, and also looking at as many things as possible as well, I think, for different inspirations. So that was great. I think the great thing as well was getting things played. Andrew was really keen on trying to get things played. It's always with the element of wanting things to be performed or recorded in some shape or form. So it was such a great encourager with that.
And how did you find the atmosphere there?
It was great. I think that right through, for me, that magical period, coming back, because when I got invited back, Andrew, some years later, when they saw me playing and touring and going and doing all this stuff all over the world, it was like Andrew was one of the first people to invite me back, to come and actually do some masterclass, to do a concert and then some masterclasses and stuff. And then it went on from there. He said, well, how do you feel about I'm thinking about starting up the creative studies thing and, teaching electric guitar and bass and some alternative stuff. So it sort of got me really involved. I was teaching at various other places and colleges, but this was just an opportunity that was fantastic.
Yeah, right from the very start of the School of Creative Studies.
Yeah, so it must have been about 1989 sort of to 90. That's when it really started to kick in, and obviously got great people like, what's her name, Martin, that you interviewed, and that Riley and that. It's great, and we're still in contact, which is great. I see Martin, superb. I saw all these great characters come out. Of course, Joe Broughton. We had people like that coming through that whole thing. In fact, Joe says creative studies thing was such a good outlet for people that maybe didn't fit into the regular kind of format of things. So again, it's this thing, if you could try anything out in terms of performance or composition, it was really open-ended. It's like a bit like the all music policy in some ways that I remember John Dankworth had, like looking at every aspect of music, and that was such a great, vibrant time. I would say that 10 years was some of the greatest periods of my life between 1990 and 2000. Because unfortunately, it all changed a bit. Andrew will tell you then, it kind of went through a bit of a change, the whole conservatoire, didn't it? Of course, he got ill as well, which was a real sad thing. I think trying to keep up with all the stuff there was, getting too much with all the ways everything's changed with the bureaucracy, everything else you get with universities and stuff, unfortunately. Obviously, there's still a lot of great stuff going on, but it's taken a lot more hoops to get it through there.
I was 10 in 1990, and that period period? I loved coming into the Conservatoire.
The atmosphere has been building for years, and then it just kind of got even better. You know, it's just like fantastic. I mean, all the opportunities we could do, and then, you know, just having this combination of great young people coming along, like I had the chance to hook up with as well, like Joe brought, and he's done fantastic. What with the folk ensemble, it's really unique. No one else has quite got anything like it, you know. Obviously, having Joe around over the years has been fantastic. All the other people that's come through the creative studies, you know, it's been incredible over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so unique. So what's your role now?
Well, now I've been teaching some of the people on B Mus course still, doing odd things, with the guitar and electric bass. People who do it sometimes second studying, which is nice. So they might be a performer, singer, or composer, or the technology department there's quite big as well, and just other instruments, you know. So I still do some of that, so they can have some time on the instruments, which is fantastic. And of course, teaching them mainly on the kind of jazz course, but I do the more specialist stuff rather than the full-time thing, because one of my aims of things the last few years is doing the more specialist kind of solo guitar and bass stuff, kind of more cross-fertilization of ideas. And the one thing I will be put in charge when we're allowed to do it again is a great friend of mine who came examining as well, who worked with for years, Phil Miller, who knew your dad as well, because Andrew got him to come up and do masterclasses with getting the people out of In Cahoots, the band that we had, and Soft Machine and everything. And that was another great thing with the creators, because we used to have some amazing access to workshop stuff. I think we had Doug Boyle as well, came up with Phil once, who used to play with Robert Plant and everything. So it was all this great mix of people I could actually bring in with all my connections as well then. And John, Etheridge, of course, all the people who did the examining for Andrew, so we had a good team of people over the years. Obviously, I'm still involved in that course, which helped set up, and Andrew initially helped with the setup of that as well. Of course, Jeremy's at a department now. He was a student there all those years ago, and he's stuck with it and kept it on and developing. He's got other people now in, which helps to run the whole thing. We've got the club there. It's fantastic, but we can't do anything. It's with the COVID thing. It's wonderful.
Lovely that so many of you have gone through and then stayed and taught people. It's just amazing.
Yeah, come back over the years. Well, for me, one of the great things as well, I think, which Andrew saw, one of my great visions, particularly, obviously I play classical guitar and the kind of electric guitar a bit and acoustic guitar, but the thing was the electric bass is my big area of development. I spent a lot of time trying. And when I was young, my teams, I always could see, although people didn't see at the time, I thought, what instrument, what can it do? Just a thing in the back of a band. But it's such a particular fretless bass. What brought it to the fore in the 70s were great people like Jaco Pastorius and that with Joni Mitchell and with Well Report and stuff. People, when they heard this fantastic melodic bass, and I always thought that side of it could be used in classical music. And I used to play classical music on the electric bass right from being quite young to help me get a hook on it, playing particularly Bach and stuff, it's really useful on the instrument. And
I can imagine it would be fantastic in Bach.
Well, I think that's what Andrew heard me play, something like that, and played some solos and played like that toccata, which I love the organ, so I tried to see if I could do it on the bass. And it's other things that have influenced me to try and do the bass sometimes, not just bass players. It's, jazz-wise, I was listening to a lot of the great double bass players, and just like Ray Brown and that was an influence for me being quite young. I always thought the electric bass sometimes in other music wasn't quite used to its full potential. After hearing that, and all great classical double bass players, I thought, well, why can't you do something with the electric bass and make it really have its own kind of angle and voice,
Here is Movement 2 from Andrew Downes' Concerto for guitar, electric bass guitar and strings, performed by Fred Thelonious Baker on the electric bass guitar, Simon Dinnigan on the acoustic guitar, and strings from the City of Birmingham Symphony Orchestra, conducted by the composer.
Was it your idea to do the concerto?
Well, I think it was Andrew's idea that he wanted to, I've got, this idea to combine it. And of course, I think I talked to Andrew probably years ago about this thing with the bass and particularly the fretless electric, the vocal kind of quality to the instrument. And I always thought it's something, again, that could be used, and of course, in the concerto, it really brings it into it in a really melodic musical way as well. Because, I mean, somebody could have wrote a concerto that's really flashing kind of, just all those technical difficulties and that, because a lot of harmonic work in it for some people that are probably not so familiar with that side of the extended range. For me, I describe it being a bit like a vocalist where, you got falsetto where you can actually jump the octaves and that. They call it false harmonics. Yeah, I suppose it's a similar thing. And I've always been playing with harmonics since I was a kid on the guitar, but I found them better on the bass because of the length of the string. You get much more harmonic resonance. So I've been mucking around with harmonics since I was in my teens because I was doing it on my own, but then I heard all these great solo bass pieces with people like Jacko on that, and it was like that inspired me just to get on and do it, in a lot of ways, and just carry on. And that's why I suppose I was picked up by people like John Etheridge and Rick and stuff and everybody else, and John Dankworth was very enthusiastic about the bass. And of course, Andrew must have shared the vision, and I always thought that how it worked, because he asked me about ranges and sounds and everything, and to make that whole tonality work,
Did you talk a lot with him during the composition?
Yeah, it was great actually with Andrew. What we used to do very often, and I think it was in the early day of mobile phones, he'd suddenly phone me and said, I've got this idea. And in fact, he asked me a lot about the guitar things when he couldn't get hold of Simon. He'd say, is this chord, describe it, is it possible to play it and things like that. So when I said it, yes or no, because that's the problem, is that the sounds exist, but it's, I believe you've got the fingers to play them, that's always the thing, so pushing the ranges on things, or, how many chords you could play, whether it's possible. Some of those big Spanish chords, for instance, Andrew asked me, because he was trying to put them with the whole things, and I said, the problem is you can't get them like that on the guitar, So it was great. It was like a complete, he'd ring me, he says, can you play this phrase at all on guitar or whatever, or how does that work on the bass and that? And so it was constantly like that, or I'd just have time with Andrew, and, sometimes, we'd love to go for a drink sometimes after things as well and talk through it. So it's just great social at the time, as well,
And that's really nice to hear that it was very collaborative then.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, I mean, that was the thing. So it was like a complete thing. It was great. Sometimes bring out, I've got this idea, I'm stuck on this bit. And it was great, absolutely. And I loved it. I mean, it was just such a great opportunity. The good thing I did, I managed to hook them up with a record company, which I was with a classic print. Lucky at the time, which unfortunately all went bust. But at least he got the rights back to the album and that to put it all together, you know.
Oh, it's a beautiful recording. Was it fun to make?
Well, yeah, and of course we did this. I mean, I always think about it. Still yesterday again. This is great. Just having another good listen to it. It's like, because it brings back memories of the old concerto, the old recital hall and the big hall, Avonport Hall. And of course, it had a nice acoustic for playing that kind of music. So Chris Thorpe, who's another good friend, a great engineer and master engineer, and also a good musician, because you need somebody who's an engineer like Chris to actually master something who can look at scores and work through and say, I need this bit from there to there to link it all together, because most of it was played pretty much live down in one go, but there's other bits that said, I need this section redoing, and he just joined a bit of editing to get it really good.
Oh, that's great.
And the sound and the ambience and that, and understands it. Obviously specifically written, not just as a piece, but for Simon and himself to play, you know.
What was the premiere like? Did you enjoy the premiere?
Oh, the premiere. Yeah, I remember when we did the live. Yeah, that was good.
Was that the same players or was it Conservatoire players?
I think it was Conservatoire players, wasn't it? I think must have been tying on something.
I remember that premiere. It was amazing and very strange to see an electric bass guitar on the stage. Well, and a guitar as well, doing a concerto together. Yeah. But amazing, just an amazing sound and so exciting.
Well, that's the thing. It's the excitement of the music. I mean, it got that beauty of which I always loved in Dad. You always say slow movements really to bring out the character of the bass, because it does speak slower than other instruments. But you can, with control, obviously play faster passages. I mean, that is the thing with the instrument. And also, I thought about one of the big things is like some students. One of the things you got for it is you've got this. You don't have to touch anything. Even though it's electric, I don't touch anything. I just play completely like it's the touch of an acoustic instrument. So you have to really pull it to get the sound, or you have to gently caress it to get the dynamics. You know. So all the dynamics were done by pure control. There was no mucking around with volumes and stuff. And that's the thing the students get from me, is that it's not just a one-horse trick pony that you play in a band. It's like, which you have to know how to get in a band and really drive it along and play. I mean, that's been part of my life, but also this other side to the instrument. It was great to just have that opportunity. It was a dream for me. Andrew helped make that come true. I mean, that was it, and playing it live a few times. I managed to do it a couple of times with some different orchestras over the years, and hopefully with some young players have a go at doing it as well. And that's what I'd like to see, you know.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. But going back to your performance of the piece, I mean, I absolutely I adore your playing. I particularly like the way that you did those, I think they're kind of like croons. You know what I mean? You like do a slide, a little slide into notes.
Glissandos, yeah.
I don't know if they were written into the music or if you just put them in yourself.
Well, some of it, Andrew did give a little bit of flexibility, because when I'm playing particularly written classical stuff, I try to do it exactly as I can for a composer. But then if they say, oh, can you do this? Or you're free to try a little bits around it, or see what you think about phrasing on it. So that's the thing on the fretless. It's a bit like going into early music with Baroque music, with embellishments, you know, turns and sides. There's this naturally this thing that I think it's the thing. I thought about it when Andrew's writing. Some of this has got like almost like blues phrases, but in a different kind of way, if you know what I mean, in the modal sense, you know. I mean, that's one of the things I really love that reflects on it, is the kind of sort of modal sounds that Andrew used in that composition, and the multi-harmonic and rhythmic stuff, which is really, again, makes it exciting.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the thing I got from playing, I suppose. I wish obviously get big glissandos in classical music, but yeah, the hammering and the way I play that is something that's come through from doing all the other stuff that's been incorporated into it. So, and it helps the bass sing. I think that's the other thing, is playing a fretless and playing in tune. Obviously, I've got perfect pitch, but it don't guarantee it being in tune. But it's if I've got big enough hands to stretch a particular interval. That's the thing. And also glissando. I mean, it's a big. You know, you listen to it in all orchestral music or in duos. I mean, some great cello music. You know, that's got fantastic glisses in it. I think it's one of the not for it. I'm just trying to think now. It's got wonderful, you know, glissandos, and I think that's the thing with the fretless. You get this one. You can play slow glissandos. Where on a fretted bass, it's very hard to do a slow glissando. I use my fretted bass on a lot of solo stuff because it's great for the frets and the harmonics. But the fretless, it really means you can move things around and phrasing into the notes. That's the things you can do on it. You know, it's how you gliss into the notes. You know, and hammering and pulling up. You know, it's the way you use all that articulation. You know, which has partly come from playing acoustic instruments as well.
It's just really beautiful.
Yeah, and shaping sounds and dynamics. I mean, that's the thing people don't realise. They say to me, can you play dynamics on electric bass? And I say, well, yeah, it depends. It's very simple how hard you pull it or hit it or whatever. But it gets a bad reputation sometimes on electric bass, because a lot of people just plug in and play at one level. Whereas it actually got all these different, you know, dynamic levels to play and different sounds. Obviously, I use a lot of different things when I'm playing live sometimes, but I tend to like some players, I tend to like the purer sound of the instrument. I mean, when I'm playing live in a band like Soft Machine, yeah, I'll have the old faithful fuzz box as well and things like that to get big overdriven sounds and maybe some octave splitters. And when I'm playing live, I'll put it into different choruses and different things. But when you're playing in a nice acoustic, like one of the big halls, you don't need anything. You only need just enough of amplification with the instrument to bring it up to the level of the orchestra, and that's it, really. So that you know you can control your dynamics within that, you know, so finding that magic sweet spot sometimes is difficult.
Are the faster movements hard?
Well, yeah, I mean, some tricky little bits of finger. I think sometimes if you're a good player and can articulate, you should be able to do it, but it's the musicianship required to do. I think even the orchestra really had to think about some of the multi-time things that Andrew uses in the last movement, because everybody, when they started rehearsing, was getting out and things, because you have to stick your place. I suppose from doing the sort of progressive jazz rock thing, I was used to playing odd time signatures and stuff. So I tend to play a time thing more with the groove. So it's quite hard if somebody doesn't play a strict, like an imaginary click. So if they get out of it, Andrew did fantastic at trying to keep the orchestra in line to record, and had to sort of, because even he says, crikey, I think there's a bit more work that the orchestra had to do than they thought to be able to do this. So where you got all these different multi-layer starting places, yeah. And Simon and myself sussed it out. I made sure that, I think one of the things is, anybody playing instruments, I have to think about, like you would do bar articulation or anything, I do that with our finger, the instrument, and also for intonation and stuff. You know, I have to really think about the best places to make the instrument sing and bring it to life, and how to attack those notes so that they're at a good sort of attack, because it's no use having the speed but no attack, you know. Well, that was it. Yeah, there's some tricky bits. So that in that last movement, it could easily come unstuck, you know, a few times in rehearsals, you know, but we managed to sort of get it. Once everybody knew exactly, I think that what you do as well is, I try to not learn just my own parts. And I did this when I think from learning playing percussion orchestras, that you try to learn by ear all the rest of the orchestral parts, so you know where the entries are. So if something's slightly moving, you can go with it a little bit, you know, rather than you counting and you're right, but something's moved. So it's always better. I think music in general, even if you're not playing the other parts, it's good to learn where they are.
Yeah, totally.
Because I mean, I know there's great session players who can read and everything and do everything, but I think it's better if you actually, as a performer, learn everything, the complete thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, I do solo concerts on all the instruments, and it's all down to me to get it together and hopefully remember where I am. You know, everything else is, you know, with the bands I've got to do now, there's a lot of learning, trying to listen to what everything else is going on, because I might not have much of a part anyway, because they don't need to write it out like a session play. As long as I've got the main sections, then I can try and, you know, learn by ear the rest of it. So hopefully I can fit into it as a unit, because although I was offered lots of session work when I was young, I did do lots of sessions, particularly in the 80s, because there's lots of nature films, lots of stuff, particularly where they wanted fretless basses with all the things you describe, and guitar. I mean, I play guitar and stuff as well, but yeah, it was really the bass was the instrument that really I ended up doing so much more development work with. Yeah, and I had a chance to, you know, move on with that. Yeah, so I mean, that's really a lot of the angles I've been at with it all, you know, so I'm glad to sort of hear it all again.
The final effect is just so exciting and so beautiful. I just enjoy listening to it over and over again.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is it's great, but you can put it on again, and sometimes I've not had it for a bit and then put it on really fresh.
Well, a lot of my dad's music is very there's a light feel about it.
Yes, I think that's the great thing, is the uplift of it all. Because I'm very interested to talk about that, because Andrew was talking about what the sort of modal thing that some of the guys, improvisers, use and stuff.
Yeah.
And he seems to incorporate all that in his works. You know, it's incredible, you know, particularly things like the Lydian Dominant. I love that one. He said we used to test people out on it and stuff, and you see it there in his writing and the different sort of modal aspects. And I think the way he incorporates into his composition is incredible, because it's this thing of creating fantastic melody, and that's the thing I love about Andrew's writing. He's got melodic stuff, and it's not just a load of, I can't put all the composers down, but, you know, it's just, and it's worth the effort to make it play. That's the other thing I would say. When music's, you see what the end product's going to be, or result is, I don't think of it as probably, it's just the end thing of the music, then it's fantastic, because then you're part of it, you know. Something's a bit tricky, it's worth putting the effort in, you know. Could
you explain what you mean by the leading dominant?
Or the Lydian Dominant, it's one of the modes that's used in a lot of improvisation, you know.
The Lydian Dominant.
So it's like a Lydian sound, or they call it a Lydian flat 7 sound. You can hear that in some of the concerto actually in places, you know.
So is that the Lydian mode?
Yeah, it's a Lydian, but with a kind of one note changed in it, really, you know.
Okay.
So it's a very interesting one. It's basically a derivative one of the melodic minor modes, you know.
Okay.
You've got all these different ones, you know. They all have different sounds depending on the harmonic nature of how it's used. And the thing is being melodic, you know. I mean, sometimes, unfortunately, you see all the guys whizzing around on guitar, they learn them, but they don't think about how to incorporate it into a sort of melodic sense, you know. I mean, that's the thing with composition. It's just all tools for composition. You know, it's what you create out of it, really, which you know, is incredible what Andrew's done. I mean, you listen to some of his other music as well, he's got so many different connections, you know, and fantastic modulations, and you know, they're pretty unique. But for me, it's that bringing that sort of melodic concept within all that is just to life, you know, so it really makes it worthwhile doing, you know.
Here is Movement 3 from Andrew Downes' Concerto for guitar, electric bass guitar and strings, performed by Fred Thelonious Baker on the electric bass guitar, Simon Dinnigan on the acoustic guitar, and strings from the City of Birmingham Symphony Orchestra, conducted by the composer Andrew Downes.
chance to work with some of the great Simon as he was. Unfortunately, he's not been playing over the last so many years due to all this hand problem. I mean, he's been writing, doing stuff for things, and lots of filming for things. So we kind of lost touch over years, and it wasn't far from here in Derbyshire, but we could never do anything again playing. I didn't want to sort of push doing anything because he was really sort of recovering with all that, you know. But Simon was one of the most magical players that England produced, at the young classical guitarist, I always think, because he got that spirit and everything, the tone and the beauty, you know. And I think he pushed himself to such a limit, you know, with the music Simon used to play on tour, you know, when he did his solo tours. It was incredible, you know.
Was it tendonitis?
Well, it was a kind of that. It's some kind of thing. They tried to sort it out. And one of his big tours, I mean, that was a couple of years after we did Andrew's piece and the recording. Simon was doing these amazing tours, like doing solo guitar stuff and stuff with orchestras as well. But it was just like, I think he pushed himself to such a limit that it probably damaged himself in the process, you know. But always, it's such a shame. That was out of a lot of things, you know. And then myself, in fact, I remember finishing the Soft Machine tour about 12 years ago. I came back, I was really happy. And I thought, I'll get back on with my solo stuff again. And I had all this problem with my spine. I didn't realise it had collapsed a bit and, you know, the nerves, because I was getting where I could not play, particularly classical guitar. I was seizing up and things. And then I found out I've got some collapsed, is it C7 vertebrae and C9? There's all these different things in your neck. So I've learned a lot about my spine over the last 10 years of a specialist. Is great. And our posture and play said, look, you've got really good posture and play, and people friends who do the Alexander technique and all this stuff. And by having a good technique, it's helped me survive in a way. And I've managed to play again. So that's why I'm out doing things and solo stuff again. So I just can't teach for too long if it's practical teaching, when I've got to play in a company and do things with people. I've got to be careful how much, because a lot of the kind of jazz side improvised stuff I do requires you to be there actually playing. You can't escape from it. You know, it's part of the thing that students want with you. So I like to be able to in good form. So I just have to pace my teaching when I do live stuff at the Conservatoire, so I can do it all anywhere. Because I sometimes used to teach too long at some of the other colleges and then regret it later the next day, because then my hands have just got like sponge, you know, jelly. So I've learned to sort of deal with it. As I get older, I think I'm giving myself more time to do stuff, you know. That was my kind of thing, why I didn't do so much solo stuff. But I did manage to make a solo album. What actually, thinking of the Olympics, what impressed me was seeing the Paralympics in 2012. And I thought, you know what, my friend's studio, I'm going to ask Paul if I can go in, who's a great record engineer, right near the Crooked Spire in Chesterfield, the old church. He's got a lovely room, what he did have, I think it's gone now. And I managed to do a recording with solo guitar stuff that I've not done before. So I had to forget playing the bass for a bit and concentrate on that, but I made it happen. And it's because I paced it and I did it how I wanted to do it. So I didn't have to do it all in one recording session. I could go in when I was feeling good and do it, you know.
And that was your own music?
Yeah, back then in 2012. Stuff that was hanging around for ages. And I thought I was going to have to write it all out and get some of the guitarists to play it. And I got the encouragement from other people, from Phil Miller and John Etheridge. Or Phil said to me, why don't you do it in bits then? You know, just get your mate who's a good engineer and sit with them and do it like that. So that's what I did. Do a take, go back. So I didn't have to doctor anything. I just, when I could get a good take in one go, and then just leave it. So I didn't have to book the studio all day. I could just go for a couple of hours and that.
Well, that sounds ideal.
Yeah, that was lovely. Yeah, in the little acoustic room there. So yeah, I managed to do it. So I played my dad's old guitar he left me, his Gibson, on 2 tracks. So that was nice. I actually got a tribute into him, you know. And another nice thing was that John Mayer, Jr., and Dave Murphy, of course, they formed that record company. And when there was one of the reunions at the Conservatoire, I just finished recording that particular album. Obviously, I got the solo bass thing with voice print, which was classic print as well, which I helped set up all that stuff, you know, for Andrew. It was like, I got the album The Missing Link, which has got some solo bass stuff on it, but I wanted to do the thing with the guitar. I kind of neglected it, and I thought, I'm going to do this before anything else happens to me. And yeah, that's on their label on, what was it? Well, it's gone on to Naxos now, I think, in America. They sold the rights on. So yeah, basically, Dave and John said to me at the reunion, said, well, I've got this label, anything you got? I said, well, I've just got this album. There's a couple of people interested in it, but the company would have gone bust anyway at that time. So yeah, they're interested in putting it out. So that's how I ended up putting it on their label, you know.
Wow.
Track I dedicated to all the NHS work. This was way back then, because I thought I was so impressed how they tried to look after me when I got the spinal thing. Basically, the deal was with this specialist says, well, you can have an operation, but it might paralyze you, so you can manage it, or you've got this 50-50. I thought, I'll go down the route of managing your life. Because, I mean, it's very tricky with these things, you know. I mean, they can work or not work, you know what I mean? That's the thing. You can go through all that. We have to go through your neck like Frankenstein to do it, you know. But luckily, I've kind of kept it. And sometimes things like acupuncture can help to keep the ends of the nerves all right, or other conditions, you know. Well, I tell you what, I was so relaxed once, and somebody gave me a gig tomorrow. I forgot all the music. I was so ready to play. It was great. Yeah, it only works to cure it for a little bit, but it's because you can't cure it. It's just one of those things of managing the whole thing. It could be a hereditary heavy spine, I've heard of things, so it's that, or it could be an accident I had years ago, that set it all off. But yeah, so I did the thing that inspired me. The Paralympics, I thought, I'm going to do this, mate. So that's how I did my solo guitar of it in 2012. And Johnny Mayer, Dave Murphy with the record player label put it out.
Here is Spinal Tap from Fred's CD Life Suite. The CD notes by Matthew Rook state, "This piece is driven by a sense of percussive energy and rippling, insistent bass. In terms of harmonic progression, there is a real sense of English modal folk music, alloyed with a driving African triplet pulse. The whole piece coils and writhes around the melody like a hooked eel, as if it is constantly trying to seek some point of release and repose. Given Fred's own spinal problems, it is a brilliant musical metaphor for the never-ending dance on a high wire between musical ambition and physical limits." Thankfully, this time the music wins once more, but it is a bittersweet reminder of just how much that we take for granted hangs on a thread.
there a way to follow you on some social media?
I tell you what, the Phil Miller legacy, you know, you're looking for Andrew's stuff. I mean, I'm looking after a lot of stuff for Phil's site. His wife, when he died, she had this great idea, and her son and other contributors as well, to like keep Phil's music alive. And the great thing is that we've now got the guitar prize, which they've used some of the legacy money towards students playing some of Phil's music. So there's a duo prize, there's a solo guitar prize. I've arranged stuff. That's one of the things I did in lockdown, trying to arrange it to play some of Phil's pieces. I used to play with a band. I thought, is this possible to actually do it on a solo guitar? So I did that. That's the good thing. So I've got about 3 or 4 pieces that people can choose from, even more. I'm gradually putting up their masterclasses on the site. And the bass pieces he wrote for me. So going back to the bass, there's this stuff, because Phil was another person who Andrew really liked, who really featured the bass well in the kind of jazz rock, progressive rock world. You know, I mean, that was Phil's big connection. And he wrote, again, some wonderful melodic stuff for the bass to play and some really tricky things. It's still, to this day, you know, it's like they've been a fantastic workout revisiting it. Stuff he wrote me over 30 years ago, but I've been able to do tribute to his memory because Phil died 3 years ago now. And we've got all this site, the legacy site, and his wife put the money up, you know, from the legacy to, it's all being managed at the Conservatoire, and all Phil's music scores over all the years, right back to when he was with Robert Wyatt back in the early days in the late 60s, early 70s. So there's music going back that time. It's all being preserved at the Conservatoire by Pedro and the library. So we're going to have this whole archive with the Conservatoire as a central point. And hopefully every year we'll be having the guitar prize. And I'll be also having a band playing some of Phil's music. So I'll have a 10-piece, almost a mini big band playing some of the music, you know.
Oh, that's amazing.
Which I'll be able to direct. So I'm going to have quite going up to the Conservatoire, key role in, as well as what I do solo, in helping keep Phil's music alive with all the young students and introducing it to them. Maybe something they've never heard before, you know.
Phil Miller's legacy website can be found at philmillerthelegacy.com.
So tell me about the arrangement you did of the piano.
Oh, the cool Largo.
Yeah.
That was incredible. I mean, when we had the opportunity, because Andrew was thinking, I've got these ideas of different things. What do you think, to be able to try and do a duet out of this? And me and Simon, you know, we looked at it all, and what parts can we split up between the 2 instruments? You know, so that was a really big challenge, because I had to work out on the bass. I suppose the bass is doing the left hand and or doing the harmonies in places. And sometimes the top parts are the double harmony we did with the harmonics. So I had to figure out how to make this work. And I thought, well, it goes down to this range, and we've got that. So luckily we found all the ranges, you know. It's very tight on the sound in places, but it's absolutely magical. You know, I was listening to it yesterday and I thought, God, this really brings it back, like, you know, the whole thing. You know, it was just great to have the opportunity to do it with Simon, you know.
I think magical is exactly the right word. I mean, that piece and your interpretation of it, I can't stop listening to that sometimes. I just think, oh no, I've got to listen to it again. It is just so beautiful.
Here is Cool Largo, the arrangement for guitar and bass guitar of Andrew Downes' Piano Sonatina, Movement 2, performed by Simon Dinnigan and Fred Thelonious Baker.
it's music that you don't have to be a player to enjoy it. You can just be just somebody who enjoys listening to music. I think that's the important thing with music. Everybody forgets sometimes. There's an audience, there's listeners, people want to listen. You can get the music to them, you know. I think it's nice that Andrew's put it accessible so that people can get hold of it, you know.
Yeah, that's our aim, is to just make it available for people to listen to. It just feels like there's no point in it just, you know, sitting in a chest.
It's fantastic for the opportunity to really sort of give an appraisal of Andrew and everything. It's great. You know. I mean, Andrew's done such a lot for everybody, all those students, I think, and they all feel that as well.
Thanks so much for talking to us, Fred, and for all that you've done for my dad over the years. This has been totally fascinating for me, and I'm sure it will be for our listeners too.